Hello, everyone. It is February 11th and time for another edition of Wednesday with Walton and Reis. I'm Bryan Walton, and this is my partner, Kyle Reis. Welcome, Kyle.
Hello, Bryan. Thanks for having me, sir.
As every time, we come to you via the Cardinal Nation in audio and video form and in audio form on all your favorite podcast apps. Well, Kyle, a big trade the St. Louis Cardinals made on Tuesday. It's one that I have to admit, at first blush, I don't understand, but I'm sure you are going to be able to enlighten me as well as our readers about why the Cardinals want George Soriano and they no longer, um, care to have Andre Granillo on their roster.
It's a really interesting one, isn't it, Bryan? Swapping right-handed relievers, basically. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me just from a control standpoint. Granillo has multiple option years ahead of him, and
Two
that's huge.
left,
Yeah,
2 years.
exactly. 2 more years, and that's huge for the Cardinals. I'm surprised they did it, but the best that I can gather is that they probably knew Granillo was going to be a slider only relief pitcher from the right side, and they liked the slider and the changeup at the very least from the right side from Soriano, although the results haven't been there. They both have fringy fastballs. Soriano also throws a sinker to pair with the four seam. And he's also uses both pitches very, very minimally and has not had major league success yet. But that's my guess is it starts with the fact that he has two off speed breaking pitches that they probably view as something to build on top of, but he does not have options. So I'm really fascinated by the decision.
Not only that, does he not have any options remaining, which means he has to make the 26-man active roster or be on the injured list, or the Cardinals would have to place him on waivers. They can't just send him to AAA. But Soriano had 3 years with the Marlins up and down, but he's now in his fifth organization in the last 3 months. So he's been placed on waivers and bounced around multiple times. So he kind of seems like a borderline roster guy, but yet the Cardinals liked him enough to take a chance on him, realizing that at the end of spring, the worst case is they get nothing for 5 years of potential control of Granillo.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating. It's going to be one of those where we get immediate results on a transaction. Like we're going to know right away if this thing doesn't work out, if it was a bad trade. And what I mean by right away is sure he might break for St. Louis from spring training as a member of the bullpen. By April, May, we'll know what this thing really is, and maybe they clear him through waivers if they do have to. But it's a very peculiar and uncharacteristic move for the Cardinals, especially at the beginning of a build, and when you're talking about so many options for Andre Granillo.
Yeah, and they obviously, and you touched on this very briefly a minute ago. They must have seen something in him that they felt that they could improve on, or I don't think they would have done it.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't take this chance unless you've identified something within his profile that you think that you can fix, or there might be some familiarity there somewhere along the line. So it's one of those two things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm down in Jupiter as I have been, and the good news is that camp has opened already, and folks will be able to come to the Cardinal Nation and see a lot of the photographs I took the first day. As of the time we're taping this, I haven't prepared them yet, so I'm going to be up late tonight. This is obviously Tuesday night that I say this, but the good news is that pitchers and catchers have reported, and they've also reported for what's called minor league depth camp. It used to be called step camp. Now they just call it depth camp. But the interesting part about it is that there's going to be, when the position players report at the end of the week, there's going to be 70 players on the minor league side. And the reason that they start the depth camp at the same time as the major league camp is that these are players that they want to have be available to come over and augment the major league roster when they start playing games. They're only just a couple of weeks away from playing the St. Louis Cardinals playing their first spring training game. And, we always see 4, 5, 6 guys, mix of pitchers and position players come over each day. So this is a good thing. And of course, these guys also get a head start on preparation for the minor league season. And of course, then all the 67 players, I believe it is, at least the pitchers and catchers part of that, about 37 players, I believe, on the major league side are also present. Watch the catchers work out. A lot of the pitchers are here. Nobody's throwing off a mound yet, but folks were, doing early spring training kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bryan, what stuck out of you? What stood out? I guess my question is, how do you feel about the facility from what you've seen today?
Well, what impressed me the most was there's a huge new building that is designed for the strength and conditioning player performance organization. They have their own building, and it's good size. Um, there's more meeting rooms. There's rooms where the players can eat. We didn't go into the clubhouses. The minor league clubhouse is supposedly done, so the players actually have a place to dress and all. A huge new the old batting cages, the old facilities gone, and they built a whole new major league batting tunnel with a raised mound even, so that pitchers could throw bullpens inside if necessary, and that's new. So there's a lot going on there. There's more yet to be done. This is like the second phase of a three-phase project that's going to go on for some time. So it's positive so far, definitely positive. Everybody seems to be excited about the new construction that's gone on and is still going on.
Yeah, good, Bryan. I apologize. I've had kind of a busy work day. We're kind of in the middle of chaos, and I have not really been able to pay attention to what's really going on. I know that Durangelo Senja threw a bullpen from both sides, both lefty and righty today. I know that caught some attention. What were the other headlines from day
I,
one of camp?
I did not see his bullpen, unfortunately. I may have been on another field. There's six fields where stuff is going on. So unfortunately, I missed that. I didn't see any players actually throwing pins. The only work that I saw that would be live work is the three major league catchers. Of course, Pozo, Pajes, who's our third? Help me there. Oh,
Pozo Pajes.
of course, Ivan Herrera.
Yeah.
Of course, Ivan Herrera. All
Uh-huh.
all getting their work in, and I do understand that the major leaguers who are going to the World Baseball Classic we're already required to be in camp to sort of get ramped up for when they leave in the next few days to join their World Baseball Classic teams.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's exciting, Bryan. That's exciting. You know, I know again, like I've seen very little about what's going on today, but I know that I have a pretty exciting renewed interest already in just a little bit I've seen in spring training for the St. Louis Cardinals. So I'm anxious to see what you're doing over at the Cardinal Nation. I can't wait to see some of the work that you've put in.
Yeah, yeah. And then we look forward in a couple weeks. Then the regular minor league camp will begin, and there'll be a whole batch of other players, including probably a dozen or more players from the Dominican Academy coming over for the first time. And then, in March, there will be minor league games that are being held on the backfields each day, and that's all coming. And don't have the schedules or anything yet, but we should have it soon.
How is I mean, I know that you haven't been in the clubhouse, but how is the access? Do you feel like the access has been communicated pretty well, or
Yeah, they actually took us around. Cardinals media relations folk took the media around, and Ricky Horton and Claiborne and Gould and Jeff Jones and me, a whole bunch of folks all around and showed us what they could show us. Now there are areas behind the scenes that they couldn't yet, but they took us around and showed us where, because everything's different now. So area there used to be a media patio where everybody could sit and converge sort of outside the clubhouse. That doesn't exist anymore, but there's a nice new media room. And the word is that Oliver Marmol is going to come in to the media room and meet with the media each morning in there rather than outside where there's noise and construction and God only knows what else going on. So there's, everybody's kind of feeling their way around, the first day that everybody's allowed into the complex. And the good news is the part that faces the fans, the part inside the stadium has all been done. So there's a lot of new areas and a lot of refreshed parts of the main stadium that when the games start, the fans should be able to enjoy.
wow, I can't wait. Yeah, I like that media idea. That's a really smart idea, especially with construction going on, having a little media room there
Yeah,
ready to go.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and I'm also anxious as we get progressed to find out what your impressions are on how some of this will affect the Palm Beach season. So be ready for that in 3 or 4 weeks when I ask you
I
about
will, I
that.
will tell you that the Palm Beach folks are out of their mind excited over this frozen iguanas thing. I mean, it's taken off. I can't explain why. They're not the first team to come up with this alternate identity, but it has just taken on a life of its own. I was told that the Palm Beach merchandise shop, clubhouse shop, has sold out their full year allocation of stuff already. They're having to
Wow.
reorder because they sold out what they ordered for the entire year already because people are excited about frozen iguanas. Who
Man,
knew?
if you do, Bryan, a marketing man, I would think that if you do good marketing, that you might you reap the benefits. And the whole logo was good. Everything was really well done. So good for them. That's exciting.
And maybe it'll generate some more excitement. Palm Beach has had trouble, and same with Jupiter. I mean, the facility, all of Florida minor league have had trouble drawing fans. So yeah, there's a lot of competition for the entertainment dollar. There's a lot of competition for people's attention. So it might help get a few more people in the stands, and the players like that as well. Hey, nobody wants to play in a mostly empty stadium where
Yeah.
you can hear your voice echo. So that might make it a little more exciting for the players too.
Wow. Cool. Let's hope so. That's fun. Frozen
Yeah,
iguanas, Bryan, for everybody.
there you go. Um, One of the things that happened, a piece of news this week that I'm interested in your perspective on, Kyle. We've been watching the different ratings, the different rankings sort of trickle out, and there was big news earlier this week in that Baseball America announced the Cardinals as having the number 2 farm system in baseball, and that's in comparison to several of the others that had come out that had the Cardinals in the 8, 9, 10, 11 range. Do you know what it is that Baseball America saw that they really liked and that put the Cardinals, that high? And by the way, as exciting as that is, the Cardinals are still sandwiched between the Pirates and the Brewers. So, in
Yeah.
Baseball America's view, the top 3 farm systems in baseball are all in the National League Central, which is pretty amazing.
That's my favorite part about it all, Bryan, is, it seems like when you try to, even when you try to be like on the cutting edge and separate yourself from a prospect development standpoint, you look around and your peers are always Milwaukee and Pittsburgh, which is just a fascinating exploration of how farm systems work. To your question about Baseball America, what they might think, I have not heard them talk about it. I know that they've put out some podcasts. I know that they wrote about it. I haven't really talked to anybody about it. I think that it's a little similar to what Fangraphs did when they did the valuation of the franchise. I think it's a little similar to that. I think the Cardinals have an interesting grouping of high-end prospects and specifically Weatherholt, Doyle, and Rainiel Rodriguez. And then they have a really interesting group of mid-range prospects. And the thing about Baseball America is that they really value Tanner Franklin. A lot of other outlets don't. I think that gives the Cardinals a boost. I think that they are still really high on Yairo Padilla, where maybe some others, including ourselves, aren't quite as high as they are. I think that they think highly of a lot of the international guys that the Cardinals have signed, Royal Strop, this Emmanuel Luna, other Sebastian De Los Santos, Miguel Hernandez. They think highly of these players where maybe some of the other outlets aren't. So I think
Mhm.
all of this plays in. I know that Baseball America in general loves Cade Crossland, and I think on their list of Cardinals top 30 prospects, he's somewhere between 21 and 30, and I think he might actually be like 24 or 26, somewhere around there. And they think incredibly highly of Cade Crossland. And I think when they start putting him in the back 20 for thinking of thinking very highly of him, I think that tells you that they view the Cardinals as having depth and not just wasted depth, not just again, I say wasted depth, and then I'm going to beat up on him because he was traded today, but like Andre Granillo, right? They have guys, Andre Granillo very well probably deserved to be a top 30 prospect, a top 20 prospect a year ago for the Cardinals. Well, what the Cardinals have been able to supplement their organization with that's push guys like Granillo down 40-ish on our list, and you and I had differing levels of interest in Granillo. Like the talent that the Cardinals have brought in have pushed those guys. And I think that's probably what they're seeing is the influx of talent since specifically July of last year.
And I will give you kudos where you deserve it. You were less optimistic about Granillo than I was, and the Cardinals obviously saw it that way, and that they traded him away.
Yeah.
But I want to talk just a little bit, and we'll get into this in more detail once. I think Fangraphs are probably the last to come out with their national top 100. But Rainiel Rodriguez has really leapt up. We knew Doyle was going to be in the 30-ish range, right? Based on all the excitement around him being taken in the draft. But on several lists, Rainiel Rodriguez is ranked ahead of Doyle. ESPN had him in their top 20, has him in their top 20.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one too, because that's Kiley McDaniel. And Kiley, my understanding is of all of the prospect evaluators, he's probably the one who's most dialed in these days with other organizations. No disrespect to Keith Law or Eric Longenhagen. Keith Law at The Athletic, Eric Longenhagen at Fangraphs, Jeff Ponce and the other group at Baseball America. Kiley McDaniel's kind of I guess he has the ear to the pulse the way that like Jeff Passan does. So he there's a little extra credence to maybe his list where some others might, maybe not from like an evaluation standpoint, but some of the noise being made around baseball. And I think that's what that list provides. And Rainiel is just a really hot name right now because of what he does and what he does well. So I think that that's really telling. uh, I think that it tells us that Major League Baseball as a whole entire entity, whether it be our third party friends, Bryan, or other organizations or scouts, evaluators across baseball. I think everybody's taking notice of what he does and how loudly he does those things, and are really starting to praise him for it. We'll find out though. He's about ready to go through the real test for a hitter and a catcher. So I'm
Well,
bullish on him.
I knew where to find him today. I looked for Leonardo Bernal, and there Rodriguez was playing catch with him. The two were inseparable last spring, and it looks like that's continuing, and that's not a bad thing for the organization at all.
Did you get some good pictures?
Yeah, I did. I did. At least I think so. We'll see. We'll see. They look good when I took them, but we'll see what they look like on the screen. But yeah, I think so. Like I said, a lot of the major league pitching staff were here, saw pretty much everybody, including Andre Granillo in what must have been like his last hour in the organization. Because I think I was taking photos of him like at 1 o'clock or 1:30 or whatever, and the trade got announced like at 2:30. So obviously he didn't have any advance notice that it was coming, or he wouldn't have been out there working out with the guys.
Do you think just a couple of the Nationals execs and the Cardinals execs got together for lunch just offhand, met about midway between, and thought, hey, let's have some fun?
Well, the good news is the guys are, the two teams are close. So
Yeah.
whatever arrangements they made to bring themselves and their families or whoever they brought down to spring training, of course, the Nationals just train in West Palm Beach, not too far down the road. That's the next closest complex, in fact, to the Cardinals and the Marlins. So that's a positive thing for them at least, because it's got to be disruptive. You just got to spring training the first day, you report, you're on the field, and call you over and say, hey, by the way, you're a Washington National now. Good luck.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for going through your opening camp medicals. Thanks for going through the physical. By the way, we got a taxi for you, and you'll be at your new home in 40 minutes.
Yeah, that's tough. But I do give Hein Bloom credit for, and I was critical about this all winter long, and that was trying to get the Brendan Donovan situation resolved before spring camp began. I think most people thought that something might happen at some point, but you just don't want your camp to be distracted by that trade happening, even in the first few days of camp. So it was good that they got that done last week, and it'll give time for the new guys to get acclimated, and like you said, that apparently they're already on the mound, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, exciting times. Man, I do wonder, like, as a Cardinal player, if all of a sudden you look over your first day in, Andre Granillo's been traded, you're like, wait, what's going on? Like, huh? What's
Yeah.
happening now? You know?
Yeah, I got to admit, I'm scratching my head a little bit, but hey, we got to trust these guys. It's probably the first trade that they've made so far that I'm thinking, I don't really get that one. But these guys do it full time and they know what they're doing, so I'll give them the benefit. And let's face it, if it doesn't work out, we're talking about the back end of the 26-man roster, so it's not the end of the world for sure.
Bryan, you nailed it. That's the perfect way of looking at it. That's kind of the way that I've been looking at it. I have not been able to articulate it to myself or out loud that well until now. But yeah, splitting hairs is really what this ends up becoming from a depth standpoint, not from necessarily a major league contribution standpoint. So, really fascinating. Just a really fascinating move. And to your point, like the little bit I did notice on Twitter, it's the first time that the fans, since Heim took over, were fans like, I'm not sure about this one. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I'm not sure about this one. So, by and large, that has been what I've noticed in my small scrolling. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, same thing on the Cardinal Nation message board community. By the way, that's something that we have at the Cardinal Nation that's free for everybody, and that is for those who like the old time way of interacting with people. In a message board type of format. We have a very active forum, a lot of discussion going on there. So if you want to get into some Cardinal talk in an environment that's moderated, so there's not a lot of foolishness that goes on there. So swing
That's
by
why
the
I'm not
Cardinal
on
Nation
it because
forums.
they got rid of all the foolishness. So that you can.
Well, I didn't want to say anything, Kyle, but yeah. So one of the other things that we've done at the Cardinal Nation this last week, other than try to keep up with all the moves that have been going on, because the Cardinals have continued to sign guys from different organizations like Tread Athletics and others that are sort of non-Cardinals training type organizations. Which, by the way, they're saying they want to be so good with their facilities and their abilities that these guys don't have to go out of house to do their off-season training. So that's kind of one of the Cardinal stated objectives. But any of these guys, these recent guys these pitchers they brought in, catch your eye?
Not in particular, Brian. It's funny. I was looking at the list of guys, and uh, I think that they're all really interesting. I think in the back of my mind, I think about Weiss and Taylor from last year, and to me, that's kind of what this group is. I know
And Taylor
Anton
was a big contributor. I mean, he was arguably the most consistent pitcher on the Memphis roster all year.
Yeah, exactly. There's these guys all have some interesting pitch and fastball with some velocity to kind of work on, and I think that they're going to fill valuable innings down at AAA, and maybe one of them gets a sniff. But I do like the fact that they're bringing in a lot. The gentleman, the most recent one, his name's Antonelli, right? Isn't that it's a Italian name that I'm
Militello,
Militello,
Justin
Antonelli,
Militello.
yeah,
Yeah.
that gentleman. I just combined his first name and his last name into one name. You can do that sometimes. That's how we get all our favorite celebrity names, Brian. But that's so yeah, like
He
he's a
hasn't yet earned to be called one name yet.
kid's fair, but we have it in the hopper ready to go whenever it's
Yes,
time.
when he does.
Uh, but yeah, he again mid 90s fastball with some interesting characteristics. Throws a slider that's kind of interesting, at least in a lab setting. And of course, when you get out of the lab and you get on the mound and the fans and the people and in game, it changes it. But I know the Cardinals have gone out of their way to be really particular about some of these lab rebuilt pitchers and who they're taking and why they're taking them. So they have a method to this madness, and they're very selective about who they're signing. It's not just like, oh, we're trying to backfill, which is
Mhm.
also interesting, Brian. And we've talked about the Cardinals' pitching depth, and especially at the lower levels. But again, to reiterate a point you said last week, and you've said constantly, is when you bring one of these guys in, one of the other pitchers has to find their way out eventually. By the time we get to the season, so that's
Yeah,
fascinating.
there are gonna be a lot of releases this spring. I mean, there has to be just because there's way more guys in camp than will fit on the rosters.
Yeah, yeah, I'm really anxious to see how that goes. It's going to be a whirlwind camp. I think that in the back of my mind, because some of the older players have been traded, Brendan Donovan's gone. It seems like some of the roster redundancies aren't as redundant, although they pretty much are. I think that I think it's still going to be kind of a whirlwind camp that's hard to really get a gauge for or a feeling for.
Now, the Cardinals also added a position player on the 40-man roster, and that's a 23-year-old third baseman, Bryan Ramos, who spent a lot of time with the White Sox, but then was designated for assignment. At one point in time, he looked like he was talked about as their third baseman of the future, but he was designated for assignment, and Baltimore purchased him, but then tried to slip him through waivers 5 days later. The Cardinals picked him up. I'm trying to understand where and why the Cardinals need another third baseman right now. And this is a 40-man roster, and again, Bryan Ramos has used up all his minor league options. So, does he take Donovan's place kind of with all the other things moving? But what about JJ? And is he a hedge? I guess what I'm trying to say is he a hedge if JJ fails?
I think he's more of a hedge if Nolan Gorman comes in and he's terrible, and Thomas Ajaci's terrible, and Jose Fermin is terrible. I mean, really, that's what I think. I think it's just again, kind of. I think it's a gambit more than anything. I really do. I like I like Brian Ramos, Brian. I honestly think now it has not manifested at the major league level, and I don't know if it'll happen right away. But I like his swing. I like his setup. I honestly think he's a better third baseman than those other three gentlemen we brought up. Even Nolan Gorman back at his natural position. I don't know what he's going to be at any other position if he ends up in a super utility role, but I think he's actually a little bit better at third. And I also think that again, while it hasn't manifested at the major league level at the plate, I think that there's interesting mechanics there. Like I went back and I watched a bunch of his at bats, and granted, it was probably only like 20 at bats at the minor league level in 2025 where he was not good, but there was not a pattern to beating him. He beats himself, but like every once in a while he get a hit in a pitcher's count. Every once in a while he get a hit in a hitter's count. Every once in a while he get a hit on a breaking pitch in a pitcher's count, and then a breaking pitch in a hitter's count. There was no like real consistent thing there. He does struggle against sweepy breaking pitches from the right side. That's kind of an issue. Some elite heat up is really where he struggles too. But really, his swing mechanics, he has good balance in his swing. It's short and compact. Actually, his swing reminds me just the swing mechanics of it all. especially through the zone. It kind of reminds me of Randy Arozarena's just a little bit. That same
Yeah.
kind of like directness, swing path, the way that he stay like the way that he opens up on his front side, especially in his upper body. There's a little bit of that just from like a visual representation standpoint. So I find myself more interested in Bryan Ramos than I otherwise would be, and more intrigued by what the future might hold for him if he can show in spring training that he's on par with what we've seen out of Nolan Gorman, Jose Fermin, and Thomas Ajacci so far in their major league career.
Well, and of the major contenders, I don't know if Gorman. I guess Gorman still has options and could be sent out. Probably won't, but so JC could be sent out definitely. Prieto could be sent out. I think Fermin may be out of options as well. But they haven't added Weatherholt to the roster yet, and if he's not ready, they could wait on him. I think he's definitely the odds-on favorite to win the second base job, and nobody's going to announce that at this point.
Yeah, yeah. It's again, it just feels like the Jordan Walker thing all over again, right? Like, he's definitely making the club, and JJ's definitely making the club, and he's going to get second base. I think that we're all resigned to it. I think we'd all kind of be shocked if it didn't happen if he was healthy.
Yeah.
So it's really what happens at third, and I'm
But
on
the
the
difference, I'm sorry, just to interrupt for one second, though, I got to say
yeah.
this.
There are
The,
many
diff
differences.
the difference with the Jordan Walker situation is that Weatherholt had a third to a half a season at AAA of very effective baseball that Jordan Walker
Yeah.
did not have.
Yeah, and he was older. He's a college player. He was already more polished from game to game. There are plenty of other things that make it different. It was just the one similarity, definitely, Bryan, is that they entered that camp before they made a major league debut, pretty much penciled in to a starting spot.
And yeah, one of the posters on our forum had mentioned this, and I hadn't really thought about it until they mentioned it, but they said, hey, you keep talking about Jordan Walker. What about Victor Scott? They kind of did the same thing with Victor Scott.
Yeah.
They brought him up really before he was probably ready. And, he's another one that, they're hoping that this year is the year that he starts to become a more balanced offensive player. But you also wonder, hey, did they do him a disservice by bringing him up and throwing him in the fire as quickly as they did?
The reason that I don't personally, and look, I was very much against them breaking camp with Victor Scott. Even when he got off to kind of a hot start that spring training, I did not like the idea. I kept, I feel like every conversation I had was, what did we learn from last year? We didn't learn anything from last year, apparently. But I will say the difference for me is the circumstances around Victor Scott. Remember, Jordan Walker bulldozed Dylan Carlson in right center field. Dylan was poised to be the starter. Victor Scott was not going to break camp at that point.
Good point. So circumstances were different, definitely.
And that is a little different. Now, of course, you look at it and you say, well, the Cardinals are at fault because they should have known and seen and understood that Michael Ciani was going to give them every little bit that Victor Scott was going to. And then they got caught up in some of the excitement that came with Victor Scott that Michael Ciani didn't have. And that probably hurt them in the long run and probably hurt Victor Scott in the short and potentially long term as well.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about all these guys bouncing around on waivers. I think Ciani's now like on his fifth organization this winter, and I have an issue with that. I'll get on my soapbox for just a minute, and that is the way that the waiver rules work. It costs very little. I think it's 10 grand or something to claim a player off waivers, and there's nothing to stop an organization to put the guy on waivers the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're seeing it, in the case of some of these players, they're only on waivers a week or less, and they're back out on the market. And I don't think that's right. I think if an organization claims a guy, they should have to keep him for 30 days or 60 days or something. It just doesn't feel fair to the players to be bounced around like this. And granted, there are guys that are on the back end of a roster, but Michael Ciani obviously has value, or teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers and all wouldn't be claiming him, and the Braves.
Well, it's such a great point, Bryan. I would love to see, even like 2 weeks, and then the offseason, the offseason's funny too, because how does that conversation go? All right, we're the New York Yankees, Michael Ciani. We're claiming you off waivers. We think you're too good to pass up on. We think that your defense. And then you get a call 3 days later, and you're like, hey, Michael, look, something came up. And
sorry, you're number 41. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That can't be comfortable for anybody involved, And also, I think that it would be better. It would benefit the player if the team had to actually think like, all right, we have to hold this player for X amount of days. I think it's a fascinating concept.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be a year like Rule 5, but Rule 5, that penalty is there for a reason so that teams don't jerk around players. And this is something the players union needs to go fight the fight if that's something that they want to put on their list. but it's just something that just kind of rubs me the wrong way to see these guys, get bounced around. And I'm sure they'll say, listen, if my option is, being on a 40-man roster, not being on a 40-man roster, keep bouncing me. But
Yeah,
still, it just doesn't rub me the right way. That's all.
I like it. Let's work on finding a solution to it, Brian. I think you're onto something.
There we go. So, Kyle, anything else that you want to cover this week that I didn't mention? We went through a lot of topics in a hurry this time around.
No, no. The last two things I'll say is, again, I know you'll probably go over it here in a second, but that prospect handbook over at the Cardinal Nation is a beautiful, beautiful thing that I think people should get. And then I would like to apologize to the audience a little behind the curtains. I have a work situation tonight, so our podcast will be tight 30, and that's on me. Brian and I could talk for another 15, 20 hours at the very least straight.
We'll
And
do it next
but
time.
yeah, we'll do it next time. We'll have more to talk about next week.
And also swing by and look, we've placed all three of the prospects that the Cardinals picked up in the Donovan trade into our top 40. The top 40 list is there for everybody to see, and some number of the articles are free, but you can read all that detail in the prospect guide. And think about subscribing to the Cardinal Nation. It's worth your money for a year, I think, and it allows you to buy the prospect guide in PDF form for half price. So good deal all the way around.
Yeah,
Kyle,
real fast.
thank you.
The
Thank you
last thing I'll
for
say is last night I was on the Hard Nine podcast with Caleb and Mike Noble, and they're getting a subscription for the two of them. They're getting a subscription to the Cardinal Nation, and they love it, and they were raving about it last night. So those are podcasters; they know what they're doing.
excellent, excellent. Well, Kyle, thanks again for your input and insight as always. And we will be back at you on I guess that'd be the 18th. Take care, everybody, in the meantime.